Episode 138 of the State of the Old Republic podcast was originally recorded on January 7th, 2026. It's the State of the Old Republic podcast. This week on the show, we're putting 2025 in the rearview mirror and breaking down everything SWTOR delivered, the highs, the lows, and whether it added up to a good year. Then we shift gears and look ahead to 2026. I'll walk through what's on the horizon and share my early predictions for Game Update 8.0. And finally, even though we have a roadmap for 2026, I'm exploring an alternate timeline. What this year might have looked like if the voice actor strike had never happened. And with that, it's time to make the jump to light speed.
And cue the moron.
Welcome to episode 138 of the State of the Old Republic podcast. I'm your host, Ted, and as you heard in the opening, I have another great show lined up for you today. Well, Happy New Year, everyone. Now that 2025 is officially in the rearview mirror and we've crossed into 2026, I thought it would be the perfect time to take a step back and reflect on 2025, and more importantly, take a look at where the game is headed in 2026. This year in SWTOR was complicated. It was a year of patience, of promise, and of finally getting some payoff. And if the recent producer's letter is any indication, 2026 is setting up to be one of the most exciting years in the game's history. So let's rewind to January 2025 and see what kind of year it was for the Old Republic. Remember where we were at the start of last year? The holiday season had just wrapped. We were still riding the high of Game Update 7.6. Dynamic Encounters had launched in December 2024, giving us new content on Hoth and Tatooine. Galactic Season 7 was still going, but nearing its end. We were all chasing those rewards, running objectives, and waiting. Waiting for story. See, at that point, we'd gone 8 months since Desperate Defiance back in May of 2024. The voice actor strike had begun in July, and while the devs never officially confirmed it, we all knew that's why the narrative pipeline had run dry. They couldn't record, and we couldn't get new story. The strike was still ongoing in January, which meant no end in sight. The machinery of storytelling had ground to a halt, and all we could do was wait. January was quiet. Dynamic Encounters gave us something new to do at least, and for the hardcore raiders, there was Ilum. Cold, dark, and unforgiving, where ops teams were grinding away at the relentless replicator boss over and over and over again, gathering those raw materials for shiny new augments. But underneath it all was this low hum of uncertainty. The features added in 7.6 wouldn't feel new forever. So when would the strike end? When would recording resume? And when it did, how long until we'd actually see new story? There were no answers yet, just patience and hope. Now, when I read Keith's quarterly letters, I react to his recaps like Koth trying to flee Asylum. In Game Update 7.6.1, we started Galactic Season 8.
I know.
Then in 7.7, we added Dynamic Encounters to more worlds.
I know.
And then in 7.8, we added Galactic Threads.
I know.
You know what was delivered in 2025. You were there, you played it. So instead of reciting the patch notes, I want to talk about what it all meant. But here is a high-level view of what was delivered. We got 2 Galactic seasons, 2 PvP seasons, Dynamic Encounters exploded across 7 new planets, major quality of life improvements, character customization on steroids, Master Mode Relentless Replicator with legendary augments, And finally, after a year of waiting, story returned with Galactic Threads, and we got the wreckage on Dantooine. But what did all of that actually accomplish for the game? Well, let's start with dynamic encounters. This feature has been great for SWTOR. Even the original ones on Hoth and Tatooine, a full year later, are still fun. There are tons of achievements and rewards to earn. I've completed almost every encounter on Hoth, Tatooine, and the other worlds, and I still don't have any of the mounts. That's good design. It keeps players coming back and doing more than just completing each encounter. Mysteries and secrets are awesome. The wreckage on Dantooine, that was the perfect evolution of dynamic encounters. A massive new zone, multiple biomes that change over time, a master mode level flashpoint boss. It's everything the feature was building toward. My only regret? That it didn't arrive a year ago. It really could have helped carry us through the story drought. Speaking of which, the first half of 2025 was rough. The uncertainty was troublesome. We didn't know when the strike would end. We didn't know when the story would return. But in July, when the voice actors' strike finally ended and Broadsword announced that Galactic Threads was coming in 7/8, we got light at the end of the tunnel, and for once, it wasn't an oncoming unbarring train. When Galactic Threads finally arrived in December, it delivered. This was possibly the best story beat of Legacy of the Sith so far. The narrative threads wove together beautifully, the stakes felt real, and it reminded us why we fell in love with this game's storytelling in the first place.
You now know what Malgus intends. Null's machine, utilized on a grand scale, reawakening a connection to the Force in many. Enough to fundamentally disrupt the order of things, to overwhelm the Jedi and the Sith and their weakening grasp of control.
Now let's talk about character customization. A lot of players probably viewed the flood of new skin tones, hair colors, and customization options as nice to have. I think they're underrated. The additional skin colors really breathe life into character creation. In some cases, it can feel like you're playing a whole new species. Purple Twi'leks, red Mary Allen, these aren't just cosmetic tweaks, they're identity options, and for a game built on role-playing, that matters. Quality of life improvements were solid across the board. The Activity Finder updates made queuing for group content smoother. The free-to-play changes, unlocking quick bars, removing artifact authorization for gear under level 80, were smart moves that made the game more accessible without compromising the subscriber experience. And speaking of subscribers, we also got the subscriber login event, a simple but generous event. Subscribers were granted an awesome companion-enabled mount. We earned tokens to spend on a variety of items, including 2 amazing ship droid customizations inspired by K2SO from Andor, and we were able to purchase endgame gear for almost nothing. I got 2 full sets of 344 Rakata gear out of it. I'd love to see them do this again, but I'd also love to see more original rewards. If you didn't need the gear, there wasn't too much to get excited about. And for the Ops crowd, Master Mode Relentless Replicator and the introduction of legendary augments gave hardcore raiders something meaningful to pursue. It's not a new operation, but it's fresh content with real rewards. And here's the thing though, everything in the game has a shelf life, and we continue to pull things out of the fridge that are way beyond their expiration date and consume them. Some things, like the origin stories, are still delicious. Other things, like Eternity Vault, have gotten bland, but it's still safe to drink. The developers do what they can. Take the Replicator boss, for example. It's not a full gallon of milk, it's more like a quart, but it's fresh and it tastes really good. 2025 was a solid year. The only thing that really dragged it down was the lack of story for most of it. Imagine if there hadn't been a strike and 2025 had delivered Masters Enigma in 7.7 and Legacy Reborn in 7.8. I think that would have put 2025 over the top and made it one of the better years this game has seen. But we made it through without story, and by December, things were back on track. episode, I did a deep dive on Keith Koenig's Q4 Executive Producer's Letter and explored whether we're moving from the age of expansions to the age of eras. If you haven't listened to that yet, do go back and check it out. As I noted in the last episode, the word expansion was conspicuously absent from Keith's letter. Although it's Game Update 8.0, Keith called it an anniversary update and made heavy references to this signaling a new era of the Old Republic, and I don't think that's an accident. As we all know, throughout the history of this game, every .0 update has been an expansion and referred to as such. Now, I'm not here to argue semantics this week. The real question is, what are we getting? I believe it's going to be larger and have more features than a normal story update, with some features we'd normally expect from an expansion, but maybe not all of them. Just to recap, here's what's been announced for 2026. Game Update 781 in late winter with Masters Enigma, Date Nights, and Galactic Season 10. The Legacy of the Sith finale and PvP Season 10 in spring with Game Update 7.9. And then Game Update 791 in the summer with Galactic Season 11. Strip away those two story updates that were nearly done before 2025 ended, and what's left? 2 date nights, 2 galactic seasons, and a PvP season. That's it. The first 3 quarters of 2026 are looking pretty lean. But here's what caught my attention. Look at what they've actually been building the last 2 years. Adventure, dynamic encounters, the wreckage on Dantooine, date nights. None of this is traditional content. No flashpoints, no operations, except for the Ilum Lair boss. They're experimenting, and I find that unpredictability exciting. So let me walk you through the features we normally expect in an expansion and examine how they might fit into 8.0. So we normally get a new story, level cap increase, combat and class changes, and operations or flashpoints. I'll start with the new story. That's confirmed at this point. The question is, will we be able to jump right into it, or will the starting point continue to be Ossus? I'm betting we get a clean break, skip Ossus and Legacy of the Sith entirely, and jump straight into the new era with maybe a short prelude mission. New locations too, probably 1 new planet plus a new zone on an existing one with a mission hub built around repeatable content and dynamic encounters. And what about a level cap increase? Last episode, I was on the fence about this, but the more I think about it, the more I feel like there will be an increase to 85. There's a psychological boost that players get when the cap is increased. It says that this is more than just a standard update, it's something special. It allows the developers to introduce new gear, and I think players like going after that power. Some measure of vertical progression is important. A level cap increase also forces the developers to evaluate combat styles and disciplines and make changes. At a minimum, it forces them to add new passive or active abilities, but can they even pull it off without a huge investment in rebalancing the whole game? I believe the game's scaling overhaul they did for Legacy of the Sith means they can bump the cap without breaking everything. In fact, I think most content can stay as is. Now, here's where it gets fun to speculate, and this is my wildcard prediction for 8.0. We'll finally get a new combat style. I think the whole point of decoupling combat styles from story was to allow additional ones when it made sense. So picture this, a force-sensitive combat style for tech classes. One discipline that uses a blaster and force abilities, another that uses a lightsaber and gadgets. I think we'll get one combat style at launch, maybe that force-sensitive tech hybrid, and another later on. The key thing is that these combat styles have to fit with the existing classes, and I don't think they're ready to break the force user, tech user rule completely, just bend it. Now, here's my bombshell prediction. Operations and flashpoints. I don't think we'll get either of those in 8.0. Perhaps in a later update, but not right out of the gate. In my last episode, I said it felt like they were being phased out in favor of smaller encounters like lair bosses and single flashpoint bosses. I'd expect something along those lines and not a full operation or flashpoint. And that's where 8.0 stops being a traditional expansion and becomes something else. Whatever 8.0 turns out to be, I have to believe it's more than just 7-8 with a bigger number. It's a milestone, a shakeup, and a potential pivot in SWTOR's long-term future. As we approach SWTOR's 15th anniversary, it feels like Broadsword is ready to redefine what an expansion means, or maybe even move beyond expansions altogether into the Age of Eras. And eras might mean getting some of what you expect and a whole lot you didn't see coming. So here we are at the start of 2026, looking out at what might be the most transformative year in SWTOR's history. We're finishing the Legacy of the Sith arc, we're entering a new era, we're getting an anniversary update that could redefine what this game is. And honestly, after a year of waiting, of patience, and of payoff, it feels good to have something new and different to look forward to. I don't know what 8.0 will bring. I don't know if my predictions will be right, but I know that after 15 years, this game still has the power to surprise us, to challenge us, to bring us together in this weird, wonderful corner of the Star Wars galaxy. There's a lot to watch for in 2026, and I'll be keeping my crystal ball polished. So here's to 2025, a year of waiting, and here's to 2026, a year of possibility. Now that I've talked about what 2026 might look like, I want to pull back the curtain a bit and talk about what this year might have looked like if the voice actor strike never happened, because it's kind of interesting. The strike began in July 2024, right after Desperate Defiance launched in May. For an entire year, July 2024 to July 2025, SWTOR couldn't record any new dialogue. No cutscenes, no companion conversations, no voiced missions. The narrative engine just stopped. So let's play a little alternate timeline game. Without the strike, Game Update 7.6 in December 2024 would have included Galactic Threads. Game Update 7.7 in the spring of 2025 would have brought Master's Enigma, which means Game Update 7.8, which just landed, would have been Legacy Reborn. That means we would have wrapped up the Legacy of the Sith arc a few weeks ago instead of stretching into the spring of 2026. But the strike did happen and everything shifted. We're getting Master's Enigma in early 2026, Legacy Reborn in the spring, and 8.0 in December. But here's the question. If the strike hadn't happened, would 8.0 have launched earlier in 2026? Would we have seen it in spring instead of year's end? Or is it possible that if Legacy Reborn had launched with 7.8 in December 2025 and 8.0 was always planned for December 2026, what was going to be in Game Update 7.9? Was it going to be devoid of story? Think about it. The strike gave us over a year without story from July 2024 to December 2025. That was unintended. But without the strike, was Broadsword going to give us a year without story by design? A full year between Legacy Reborn in December 2025 and 8.0 in December 2026, with nothing narrative to fill the gap? If that's the case, it feels like the strike, as painful as it was, now has us coming out ahead. We're getting 3 story updates in a row: Galactic Threads, Master's Enigma, and Legacy Reborn. That's spring 2026 wrapped up. Then we get a chance to catch our breath, let the team put the finishing touches on 8.0, and get hyped for the 15th anniversary in December. We'll never know for sure, but it's worth considering how much the strike didn't just delay content, it may have fundamentally reshaped the structure of 2026. There's another possibility though. What if the original plan for 7.8 was Legacy Reborn and the conclusion to the Legacy of the Sith story? And what if Broadsword planned a small prelude for 7.9, something to set the stage for 8.0 and the new era? Not a full-blown story update, just a couple of cinematics. With Legacy Reborn now coming in 7.9 and 7.8, maybe they decided to combine that prelude with Legacy Reborn. That would give the finale more weight and create a smoother transition into whatever comes next. One thing's for certain, a year without recording is a long time in a story-driven MMO, intentional or not. But now that the strike is over, we're poised for a steady stream of story, at least in the short run. A few more items before I let you go today. The holiday events are just about over. Life Day is the only thing that's still going on, and that ends on January 13th. January 13th is also when the Master the Fight Mobile Market Edition bundle goes away. For $99, you get a companion and mini-pet enabled mount that's rideable at level 1 and has a base speed of speeder rank 5. That's as fast as you can go. You get a droid mini-pet, GTN and mail droid toys, 5,500 cartel coins, and 6 months of game time. Looking ahead to February, you can expect a developer live stream to talk about game update 7.8.1 and hopefully get us some details on 8.0. I can't wait for that. And that's the state of the Old Republic for today. Let me cut in the sublight engines and cue the music and congratulate you on surviving another half hour listening to episode 138 of the State of the Old Republic podcast. I'm your host, Ted, and I thank you for tuning in. You can find this podcast on Buzzsprout and iTunes and wherever else you find your podcasts. I'm also back to putting these on YouTube. You can listen to the show directly from the show's site, which is SWTORpodcast.com, and there is an RSS feed where you can subscribe to the podcast directly. If you have a question for the show, you can email me at SWTORpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening. Happy New Year, and until next time, remember the Sith code, cake is a lie.